When you now go to Steam, one of the top 10 games uses blockchain technology. I think at that point, when that happens, that's when consistently you see Web3 titles also come into the top 100. And maybe we shouldn't even call Web3 titles then, but rather games using blockchain technology to enhance the player experience. That's when we can speak of success.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship. My name is Lam, your Web3 host. This is episode 63. And for those of you who are new to the show, Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship is a show highlighting the journeys of builders and innovators in Web3 and entrepreneurship. Some topics, especially in Web3, may get technical, but we do our best to keep it accessible for most of you. Here today, I'm joined by Marco van den Heuvel. He's one of the co-founders of Beam Labs. Marco, can you give a quick introduction by yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, appreciate the invitation. It's good to be here. My name is Mark van Heuvel. I'm one of the founders at Beam, and I would say, it's been quite a journey to get here. So with Beam, I think that's probably the best way to start with an introduction. I think with Beam, we are basically in the Web3 gaming industry. We're working on the investment side, on the infra side, on the community side with gamers. And myself, I tend to kind of be a jack of all trades when it comes to Beam. I tend to mingle on the community side. If you're one of the gamers that wants to participate, the campaigns that we do or the games that we test, always welcome to do so. Excited to be here and talk about what's cooking behind the scenes.
Awesome, cool, yeah. So, before we talk about all the gaming and Beam and things like that, let's go ahead and rewind the clock a bit. I think people probably want to know, like, where did you come from? What is your background? Maybe if you can choose a point, maybe from the time you went to university leading up to the current position, and maybe share with us a bit more.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think I would love to zoom in on kind of what the crypto journey has been like since we're here in Web3 anyways. So during my studies back in 2017, I got to discover Bitcoin and immediately went down the rabbit hole. And I think fast forward 1 year later, I moved to San Francisco for a study abroad semester, where that's kind of where the whole Web3 journey for me kickstarted. I had in that year kind of educated myself and everything there was around Bitcoin, but also Ethereum and altcoins, just reading pretty much all the white papers that I could find, which is, what most people still did back then with the limited information that was available back then. And as I educated myself, I enjoyed educating others. And I studied international business and languages. So it comes more on the marketing side of things. And with that, teaching things and basically educating others for other projects came very naturally. And so, throughout the past years, I would say before Merit Circle, before Beam, I worked on the community management side of things, helping communities, building communities, helping educating communities on, hey, what is that we are actually building? What is it that we are introducing a token for? How is it going to be used, etc. And so with that, obviously was an investor in crypto myself from pretty early on. Got to be involved in the gaming side of Web3 very early on. Nice. And fast forward, we're here today with where Beam's at, together with two amazing co-founders and a great team behind it.
Cool. Did you say you were building a lot of communities, right? Is that right?
That's right. So it's basically, in Web3, there's a lot of companies that came and arose during the 2017, 2019 period, I would say. And that's when there was more than ever, I would say, need for helping to build communities and getting people enthusiastic about a product when there's so many startups launching. How do you, set yourself aside from the crowd? And that's what I largely kept busy with.
Nice. Yeah. I think building community is like a skill in Web3, right? That's actually very important because without community to back up, rally for your cause or whatever it is you're building, right? It's probably going to be quite hard. So what were some of the key things that you learned from building communities back in the early days?
I think one of the things, if I just look at the Beam community, it's one of the few communities I feel that in current market sentiment is still alive. It's still very active on the chat, and it always has been true bear, true bull. And that's because every single day we show up, the founders, the team members, we show up in those chats and we chat with people. Like we're humans, we also care about the project. We care about people's opinions. And I feel like if people feel heard, if people enjoy spending time in your community, you'll see them, well, basically, word of mouth marketing. They spread the word to others. They get people enthusiastic about it as well, and they learn from it too. Whereas I see a lot of projects also hiring, third parties to manage their community. You get a nice semi-bot like, behavior where it's like question answer. That's not how you build communities, right? It's human interaction. That's the biggest learning lesson, I would say, advice that I could give anyone that wants to build one.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. I think now with the proliferation of bots, and especially like very intelligent bots, right? It might actually be like a bit harder. I mean, I think now even on X and Twitter, right, some bots are actually label, right? It's actually like label saying like this is a bot instead of, so with that it might actually be hard. Some people may not even know that they're talking to a bot, right? And
I was going to say most accounts don't even have that label, because I believe you only get the label if you use the X API. But obviously, there's a lot of bots that could bypass that and not use the X API but still tweet. I don't know, in detail how that works, but I know that there's plenty of bots, more than you might think, that are posting like humans, and it's very hard to distinguish that from real people at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And especially, I feel like it's a point because right now on X, right? I mean, you don't have to use your real name. You can just use a pseudonym or whatever.
Yep.
Like a pen name or something should be okay. And that really, prevents. So I'm not sure in the future there's a way to tell between is this a bot, and I think some bots are even getting so famous now. They get like more followers than
XPT, a few others.
Right?
It's, they're taking mindshare, and it makes sense. I mean, bots, they have what it takes to tweet 24/7. I mean, I need sleep, you need sleep, they don't. So it's insane what kind of growth you see when it comes to those bots, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't have to do the things that we human do for granted, like sleep, eat, maybe, I don't know, go out, touch some grass. They don't have to do all that, right? But we all have to do that. So it's feel like a bit unfair, but anyway, but that's what they. Yeah, it's very interesting. That's such totally different. You still convo for that though. AI. Yeah, cool. And then you said you were studying international business and language. Was that also include like a foreign language in there?
So the study itself, I'm based in the Netherlands. I'm Dutch. Studies itself was in English. The two languages that I chose with it were French and Spanish.
Nice.
I must say, I think I studied French for like 9 years, but
wow.
If I were to be there for like a full week, I would slowly get into it, but it's definitely rusty.
Nice.
In the cities, people tend to speak so fast. It's very hard.
Yeah.
But Spanish, I feel like, is a much easier language to learn and just naturally talk. Way easier. So that's pretty fun. Still speak Spanish every now and then, but
nice.
I would say the go-to language is definitely English.
Yeah, for sure. I think in Web3, everything kind of defaults to English, but then knowing the other language certainly help also when you travel to maybe Latin America, some parts of that speak culture. French. Yeah, for sure. You learn a lot of culture as well. So would you consider yourself like quadrilingual, trilingual?
I would say, well, Dutch and English definitely is,
okay. So bilingual for sure.
Each other. Bilingual for sure.
Bilingual for sure. Okay.
But the other languages, I would say, I could manage. I could make sure I
manage.
Get food, I can sleep, I can kind of work my way around. But I would never say I'm fluent in those languages.
Nice. Well, no, I think that's important, though. But be able to get around, right? Find your way, at least like express yourself, and I think that's a level that almost would need for traveling anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So I think you said that you also discovered Bitcoin. Was it during your time in college? Did someone teach you about it? Was it a book or podcast?
No, it was. So I mentioned that I was going to go abroad to San Francisco, and basically to study in the US, you needed to have some money on your bank, and you needed to prove that you would have that money. And so we got to the point where we knew we got in. And I basically asked the university, hey, which other Dutch students are going? Maybe I can see if I can, rent an apartment there or house there with some other people. And fast forward, I met this guy, and one of the first things he said was, hey, Marco, you have, a few K on your bank. Have you heard of Bitcoin? Because what else are you going to do with your money throughout this year, right? You're just waiting. And I think BTC was like 2K back then, so very early. And that's how I learned about it. I remember going home and thinking, okay, well, maybe there's something to it. I'll just check it out. bought some Bitcoin. Next day I woke up, it was 20%, decreased in value. I sold out of panic. 2 days later, it went back up again, and I thought, yeah, this is actually really interesting. I think as a gamer, you understand, digital currencies, digital value, and I thought, if I lose this, it's not too bad. It's not the money that I need for, study abroad, rather just savings I had. So I'll just put it back in, and we'll go learn more about it. And that's how things naturally evolved. And he's still friends today, 8 years later.
Nice.
So it's a very fun story to look back to.
That's awesome. Yeah. Interesting. So this friend of yours, he was also like going to school in the US?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. I didn't know him before we ended up being roommates there, and friends ever since.
That's awesome. Yeah, nice. Cool, interesting. Cool. So before we deep dive into your company, maybe just one fun personal question. Can you share with us what do you do for fun, your hobbies outside of Web3?
Outside of work, work's my life. I'll say that first. If you have my girlfriend, she'll always be like, well, you work too much. But no, I love it. I think this is a fun question, actually. I always tend to ask when we hire a new person, hey, what is a weird hobby that you have? And I would say mine is I love terrarium. So I have like some self-sustainable terraria. So you have like
the plant inside the...
Well, you can have it both with plants and with animals. Okay. In this case, I love it with animals. So I have, for example, some self-sustainable ones that's just closed with a lid. And then it was just initially water from a pond. And then it grew, plants. There were some tiny snails in it, stuff like that. So if you want to talk about a weird hobby, that's pretty one.
That's cool though. I think that's cool though. Yeah, that's like very do you need to spend a lot of time doing it every day or something?
No, not at all. That's the nice thing. You just put it there, you look at it. Obviously ultimately I would love to have some other animals like shrimp or crabs or things like that, scorpion, but that will require more maintenance. But
I see.
For now, this is kind of the low end thing to do and just have fun.
So these animals you have, what are these animals? Are they just eating the leaves or something? I don't know.
Yeah, they eat the leaves, they eat the plants, they just feed themselves, they clean the glass, the algae and whatnot. So
so it's like self-surviving or like self-sufficient, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. Yeah. How big is this thing? It's like the size of a head or something?
Yeah, a little bit bigger than the size of my head, I feel like. I got two of those pots. They're downstairs, otherwise I would show you.
Okay, all good. Yeah, I'm just curious. Yeah. I don't think I've heard anybody have that, yeah. I know people have like...
It's for YouTube, so it's...
Oh, really?
I thought, that's cool. I love animals. I always found it fascinating to see how they kind of grow and do stuff, and this is pretty cool.
Nice. So how long does it take for, I don't know, from like... Do you have to wait for them to grow up, become bigger, become like an ecosystem or something?
Yeah, it is. So in this case, you just have a big jar. You can go to a pond. You skip some sand, like I'd say like 20% of the pond is sand.
Okay.
Then the rest is water, and then you come back a month later, maybe after the lid is closed, and you start seeing plants grow, and you see the animals in there. It's it's pretty weird to think that can survive in a jar, but they do.
Wait, so the jar is like, do you leave the lid open, right, for the oxygen to come in?
No, because so you don't fill it entirely with water. You leave some air in it, and then basically the water evaporates. Then creates oxygen with the plants. It kind of becomes this literally self-sustainable ecosystem.
I see. So the lid is actually closed. So then, if you want to, do you need to put things in there from food? I don't know.
Never. No. So this is the easiest thing I could start with.
Really?
And I've had one of them for about 3 years now, I think. So it's pretty cool to see how that just kind of grows. Another one is like a year old. But like I said, I ultimately want to go to different animals like shrimp. And then obviously you need to have an aquarium and things like that. But I would say when previous apartment was a little small, so I figured, you know what, I'll just do this. And as soon as I moved into this house, I got 2 cats, and expanding a little bit.
That's crazy. So like 3 years, and the whole plant is still, and what animal is still growing, and
there's like snails. There's those things called isopods, which are basically very tiny. I first thought they were like larvae or something or spiders, but there's just very small things that clean, the dead things in the water and stuff like that. So. Yeah.
Wow, that's
you learn something from YouTube these days.
yeah, I bet it's like what is it, like origin of species or something, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like this little tiny species that I don't even know how they even survive. So okay, you close the lid, but do they get sunlight though?
No, yeah, I never put them directly in the sunlight because I
Oh,
feel like,
okay.
well, maybe the water gets hot in summer, and then
Oh, that's true.
that might
Okay.
not be amazing. So it's just in the shady place, I would say. But they
So
get
it's like room
it's just in the
temperature.
living room. Yeah, like
Okay.
room temperature, just in the living room. Yeah.
Wow, fascinating. Yeah, because I remember back in college, actually, I think someone gifted me some, what is it, cactus, which
Oh
is like
yeah,
supposed to be like one of the low effort like plant, right? But I think
yeah.
even for me, I don't know, I wasn't very like paying much attention to it. I was probably busy with like studying in school and whatnot. And then I think you're supposed to water it. I mean, maybe twice a week or something. But I think I even, so I think cactus is like one of the lowest effort. But apparently, I let one of the cactus die. So actually, I feel so bad that
That's happened to me too.
yeah. I felt
Yeah.
so bad. I gave away the other one. I got
Yeah,
two
the
and
worst thing you can do
gave away
with
one.
cacti is you overwater them. So I think you said
Oh,
like twice a week, but
okay.
you're supposed to water them like once in 3 months or something
Oh,
like
is
that.
it?
Well, it
No,
depends on which one you have, but
yeah.
if you overwater them, they die. If you do nothing, well, it's basically like a cockroach; they don't die.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm personally, I wasn't very good at like keeping plants alive. So, so I feel like giving
it's
it away
a
someone was a better
sport.
choice.
Yeah,
Yeah, cool. Well, that's a fascinating hobby. First time I heard of like terrarium. That's
yeah.
cool though.
Just put some weird facts in here.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and deep dive into your current company that you're
Yeah.
leading, Beam Labs. Yeah, feel free to share a website presentation or share maybe some background history of the company as well too.
Yeah,
That'd be good.
sure. I'll
Yeah,
just
sure.
share as I'm kind of talking through. I might as well just show kind of the website. But I think a little bit of history. So we started off as Merit Circle back in early 2021, and then essentially I like to say it's an exploded hobby because very early on, basically when Axie Infinity started to grow, which is one of the most popular Web3 games back then, still is I would say one of the most successful ones today. That really kicked off, and I was one of the breeders. To go back to the ecosystems, I was one of the breeders for the in-game characters. You were able to basically use your characters to create new ones, and they would have different genes that were very good in the game. And fast forward, when the game exploded, so did the rise of guilds. And basically, what they did, they would take those characters, they would buy them, and this was all during COVID. So there were a lot of people playing games and at home, not being able to
Yeah.
work, but wanting to earn some money on the side. And so, especially in the Philippines, Southeast Asia, South America, you saw a lot of people jumping on those guilds, being able to use their characters in the game, earn money in the game, and basically with that kind of create, a nice form of rewards for them.
Yeah.
And when I saw this whole ecosystem explode, I figured, well, why should I keep selling my characters? And instead, why don't I use them to create a guild as well? And so that was the start of what became Merit Circle. Merit Circle is basically, Beam before the rebrand. But we were also very early on when we decided to turn this into an actual product. I got two co-founders on board. They've been amazing in building a team around us, in initially, raising funding for wanting to scale this. And we went back to our roots, which was more on the investment side. So as we had the token, as we had the whole ecosystem, we figured we don't want to just rely on a single game. It's ecosystem to grow, a future business. And we saw the rise with Star Atlas, with Illuvium, some other games that were, looking promising back then, and figured, we can expand this to a much broader thing than just Axie Infinity. At the same time, we learned that, and I mentioned, before our chat, before we went live, as a gamer, you tend to understand digital currencies, digital value, but you also tend to understand game economies. And so we saw very early on that with Axie Infinity, that whole play to earn narrative, it was fully reliant on, are there going to be continuous buyers? Because as soon as, major people start selling, you're going to have a card house that kind of falls down because it's not sustainable. And as a breeder and as being so active in the entire economy of the game, we very early on noticed that, okay, purchases are slowing down. It's just a few players really that are still scaling. So we were also one of the few guilds that very early on scaled down and kind of unwinded our play to earn and guild-like activities. And as we invested in different studios, as we worked with different studios throughout the years on different, aspects, we learned from those studios their pain points and what they wanted to really experience in Web3, how they would want to use blockchain technology in their game and what that would ideally look like. And so we initially never planned to create infrastructure, but fast forward today, there's now Beam. And Beam, in essence, as you kind of, I'll scroll down here on the website a little bit to show you. Beam, in essence, has a product suite of different products that cater to game developers. We want to make it easy to create blockchain technology inside of your game. But at the same time, we want to do that in a way that speaks to a gamer and is familiar to a gamer by abstracting what that blockchain experience looks like. So you have social logins, you have buying and selling items directly in the game instead of having to navigate to a Web3 marketplace like OpenSea and being taken out of that gamer experience. And with that SDK, we basically have a Beam Hub, which is a content discovery platform. You can do quests to basically learn about different Web3 games and get rewarded. We have a mobile application where soon people are going to be able to manage their NFTs, their assets, their tokens for gaming. We also have basically an SDK where we have, an entire our own blockchain, basically, which right now is a subnet on Avalanche, but in the midst of an upgrade to its own L1, now that Avalanche has that upgrade done. It's basically a blockchain where you can swap tokens, you can buy and sell NFTs, you can basically do anything as a player that you need to be able to participate in a Web3 game. And as a developer, anything that you need to deploy Web3 inside of your game. I think that's in a nutshell a little bit where and how we've been known for the past 2 years-ish. But fast forward into 2025, we've recently released a outlook into 2025. And with that, we've had some really major announcements. The first one being that Beam L1 that I just talked about. So we're going to be upgrading from a subnet that's reliant basically on Avalanche technology to our own L1. That basically means that you can even further customize your own blockchain than you were able to before. I think when you think gaming, obviously there's way different requirements and needs for a blockchain than if you are in DeFi or in RWA or in other kinds of products and industries. We also announced the Beam Ventures, which is basically a gaming fund, the first one to get a license in Abu Dhabi in combination with AI. And what we're looking to do there is basically work with maybe Web2 studios that are Web3 curious to work with us. It could be Web3 studios that are establishing there that want to work with us as well, and that will work on both the investment and the accelerator side. And I think, that AI, we very briefly talked about that as well, but the AI side, in my opinion, is a very fast growing, well, not in my opinion, it's a fact, it's a fast growing industry, the fastest and most fascinating one that I've seen to date. And it's going to play a massive role in gaming as well. And so we're similar to how we pivoted from the guild side to broader ecosystem infrastructure side. We're seeing a movement go towards AI as well, where we feel this is where we want to also put our foot on the ground. We want to make sure that we build a brand, a company that is among the forefront of gaming, of AI, and we're doing everything that we can to make sure that happens. So, in a nutshell, don't want to take too much time from you, but in a nutshell, that's what Beam is, where we are today, what we're working towards. And just a super exciting journey that's continuing as we speak.
Cool. Yeah. So you were saying the 3 announcements for 2025, right? Layer 1, venture, and what's the third one? Did I miss?
So we had the Abu Dhabi venture. We had Beam Nodes. That's one that I didn't touch upon. It's part of the L1. So basically, with the L1, we also want to make sure that it's a fully decentralized network. So we want people to be able to run nodes and be rewarded for basically validating our network, making sure that the transactions are secure, making sure that we have the bandwidth to process all of those in-game transactions that are hopefully going to happen as more studios launch, their Web3 technology inside of their game. And the Beam nodes, I would say, is probably for the community side, one of the most, if not the most exciting thing to look forward to. Basically, with the nodes, there's going to be primary rewards, which basically is, transaction fees. Then you can think about secondary rewards, which could be part of the fees that we generated from the NFT marketplace that we have. It could be from the Beam swap, so the basically decentralized exchanges that we have. So any product that we have, we want to attach that to the Beam token. It's everything is around the Beam token. It's just where all value accrual goes, essentially. And with that, this is a great way to give back to the community. Another really exciting aspect of it that people are excited about is that there's also a validator incentive grant, basically, where part of the tokens that we have in our treasury, the positions that we have in our treasury from the investments made, or maybe even the fees that were earned through Beam Ventures, etc., are going to be sent to the validators as well as rewards. So there's different ways in which they get rewarded that is much different from the I would say, traditional nodes ecosystem and setup that you've seen from projects throughout the years. And that's, it's due to launch soon.
Cool. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, man, many exciting things coming up.
Absolutely.
There for you. Actually, so I don't think I know the history of your company really well. So probably just curious, like what way. So I guess who came up with the name Merit Circle, and was there a meaning behind it? And then why the rebrand? There must be some reason.
Yeah, very good question. So very early on during the guild, it was called XC420, and it was because I had the ENS domain 420.eth. But we also thought, okay, if we want to turn this into an actual project, we need to have an actual solid brand name, something that people can recognize with. And so when the two co-founders came on board, we were basically very soon, with the 7 of us, starting what became Merit Circle. And a very creative guy that's still with us to date, also our designer, came up with a brand presentation where he came up with the name Merit Circle. And merit basically means that if you do good, you get good back. So what you give towards others is something that you can expect to basically receive back. And a circle went towards, us basically, like I said, wanting to accrue all the value around the token. So any value that we create goes back to the token. The token helps us to create more value in the ecosystem as well. But it also spoke to the players back then on the guild side that were playing our games. They rewarded for us. They wanted to play more games and basically, helped us grow. And they, were rewarded for that as well. That's where it came from. And the reason why we rebranded, I believe that's already been, definitely over a year ago, but a little bit longer now. The reason why we rebranded is because we, like I mentioned very early on, started to unwind the play to earn guild-like operations. But even 1.5 years later, people were still seeing us as this scholarship guild, play to earn guild, whereas we were doing so much more than that. We were in infrastructure. We didn't even do the guild stuff anymore. We had the whole treasury with, the positions that we had through the investments and the studios that we worked with, that we figured it is time to basically rebrand and make sure that people might look at our project again and want to educate themselves thinking, hey, why did they rebrand? What is this project about? And for new people, they didn't find the history that Merit Circle had and think, oh, this is a guild, that's it. No, they would find the new information that was important of what we did and do today and how we want to position ourselves. And that rebrand has been the best thing that we could have done because it's opened so many doors that previously wouldn't open simply because of the perception that they had that we were still doing. Whereas, like I said, we were doing something already much further and beyond what we started with.
I see. Cool. Yeah. So I think it sounds like the rebrand was like a success in some way, right? Because you guys wanted
absolutely.
to, disassociate with the old image and then move on to like a newer image. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it was not per se that Merit Circle was a bad brand. It was more so that our journey continued. We pivoted, and we want to make sure that people understand that we've done that pivot and that what is important today that they should focus on and educate themselves on.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess back in the day, I guess was you guys more involved with the play to earn movement, right? So that was why it was.
Yeah, that was the whole Axie Infinity time frame, I would say. And there were a lot of other games that also launched play to earn back then. That a few of them actually did really well too. But it always was the bottom line of if you rely on continuous growth and demand, whereas your game might not actually be fun, then at some point when the incentives stop, you see a very, like I said, a card house that collapses really, really fast.
Yeah.
So we always say, and I still believe in the opportunity that there is in Web3 gaming, but I'm also very realistic that it is still experimental. And we have not seen the success that we want yet, even though there's already been a lot of money poured into this industry to figure out, okay, which studio is going to make the title that does take us to the next step. And I think what we'll see succeed very much goes more towards the Web 2, Web 2, Web 3, the traditional way of playing games and experiencing games, but with the benefits of what blockchain technology could offer them through ownership of the NFTs, through the rewards that you can give. On the esports side, you can have a lot more, smaller tournaments than big ones because you don't rely on all those transaction fees and cross-border payment issues and such like that. So, yeah, we'll see where that goes throughout the years.
Yeah, cool, for sure. So I'm probably want to deep dive more a bit into your three big announcements, right? I guess the first one is like, so you guys was building on Avalanche subnet, right? So you had your own subnet, and then recently you won your own layer one. So does this mean that you customizing building your own layer one, or are you using another technology to build it? Or
so basically, Avalanche announced an upgrade. I think it was early Q4. It might have been a bit earlier, but the conversations started earlier, where they mentioned we want to think about redesigning the way that subnets work and look like. One of the bigger issues with the subnet side is that as a validator, you needed to be an Avalanche validator before you could validate a subnet, meaning that you would need a very large amount of AVAX staked on your node before you would be able to, help validate those other networks. And as a result, if you think about scalability and accessibility, that makes it very tough to get a large crowd in, and with that, a lot of models that you can think around to reward the community doesn't work because it's too expensive for them to enter. And so when Avalanche announced this upgrade, they basically are changing from that model to a model where people are now able to create their own L1. It is based on Avalanche technology, but indeed, like I said, you can customize it way further than you were able to do with a subnet, where you were restricted to certain parameters, certain bandwidth, etc. That's not the case with your own L1. And instead, every validator that's going to be validating that L1 is going to pay a small monthly fee to AVAX instead. And so it's a way more scalable and viable business for AVAX to be able to enable studios way cheaper to create an actual decentralized network, their own one, while, not cutting in their own fingers by letting them go and still earning, fees this way. So for us, that's really exciting because, like I said, gaming has way different requirements when it comes to a blockchain than a DeFi has, for example. And that goes to tooling, that goes to liquidity, that goes through maybe even cross-chain activity, because not every single game is on one network. And fast forward, like I said, we're getting very close to launching that L1. And with that, Beam nodes as well, they're going to be available. We've had to wait a little bit for Avalanche to, it's the first time they're doing this too. So there's some learning lessons there. There's improvements that need to be made. We need to make sure the tech is all safe and sound and the audits come back good, and then implement all of that, obviously. So that's kind of what been work in progress throughout this quarter so far. And very excited to still hopefully see by the end of this quarter, before the end of this quarter, that launch.
I see. Cool. So let me make sure I get it correctly. So basically, it's still Avalanche technology, but it's just like they allow you to under the hood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Under the hood, it's still Avalanche technology, but with way more customization possible for companies to actually deploy that. So that partially it's still Avalanche technology, but there's a lot of your own technology put into the mix as well to make the chain what you want it to be.
I see. Cool. And then do you? So I guess do you have to pay a fee to Avalanche somehow, right?
So the nodes validators will do that. So if you want to run a node, basically for every node, I believe. It's a good question again what it was. I thought it was like $60 a month, but it might have been smaller to be able to run that node and validate the network. And here too, if you are someone that wants to participate in that whole delegation side of thing, proof of stake, you can also choose to delegate instead of validate. So
Yeah.
as a delegator, you don't have to have the hardware, you don't have to run the node. You can actually look at a list of, hey, these are people that are validating this network, running a node. I want to stake my beam onto those nodes because their performance is good. And as a reward, I get a part of the, piece of the pie, a part of the rewards that are distributed to that node operator.
I see. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. And then for the no runners, you will get the rewards in Beam or in AVAX?
So you get the primary rewards in Beam. And then, as I mentioned, there's also a secondary reward, which is the validator incentive grants from the foundation. Part of the positions that are in treasury that were made through investments, maybe obtained through advisory, etc., those are going to be distributed to those people as well. So you don't just earn Beam, you also earn different tokens. And with that, we can make sure that rewards are sustainable, because Beam is not an inflationary token. There's no inflation. Rather, there's buyback and burns. There's a lot of different ways in which Beam gets obtained and burned and taken out of circulation, and we want to keep it that way to again create a healthy, growing ecosystem, rather than one that gets diluted every day more and more.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably what many people will be interested in knowing about as well. I'm actually curious more about the side of the tech though. You said like gaming had different requirement, right? So I'm curious, what are those? Are they like you need like fast block time, transaction per second? What is it?
Yeah, things like that. I think
Yeah,
if you look at a game developer, there's a few things that they, end of the day, care about. It's very simple. They want the chain to be secure. They want the transactions that they have in their game to go through fast, cheap, and they want to make sure that all that technology works in a way that is, like I said, kind of abstracted. So as a player, this means that you just get to play the game. You don't have to worry about being taken out of this game to have to deal on a browser, to deal with a marketplace, to deal with wallet signing, transactions and whatnot. All of that can be done directly in the game. But then you need to make sure that behind the scenes, well, under the hood, everything functions properly together and is connected properly. And that is something that you can do when all the tooling is customized to work on your specific chain with the output that you want that chain to have and needs, basically, to cater towards all those transactions.
I see. Yeah, makes sense. So technically, Beam, I mean, since run on AVAC, is still like EVM compatible, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I mean, what I think what you said just now is like a lot of the account abstraction feature that many of you talk about, right? Basically, yeah, signing in, maybe like social sign in, and don't need to deal with wallet, and yeah. So
Exactly. In this case, I showed very briefly the companion app earlier. So as a gamer, you might just have an app on your phone where you can see, hey, I have those assets in those different games. But as a gamer too, you can go to a game, you log in with your email address, and behind the scenes, you basically have a wallet created for you. And I think as a gamer, the experience should be that, like I said, you just play the game. At some point, maybe you realize, hey, the game assets that I have holds value. I want to sell this for real money. Then you want to make sure all those on and off ramps also properly function within the game. But it might be that a player says, well, instead, I'm a little bit more tech savvy. I know how Web3 works. I want to take this account, this wallet that was created for me, to basically do this on a browser instead and look at what is the most efficient liquidity route for me, for example. So it is in their own custody. They're the ones that are managing the wallet. They just don't really know it because they don't have to have all the technical hassle if they don't want to.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, so you want to create that optionality, right, for people who both newbies and experienced Web3 people. Cool. Makes sense. So what's the ecosystem on the chain look like right now? Is it like many game like dApps and things like that? Or?
It's mainly games, yeah. So I mean, the DFT that we have, like I said, there's the NFT marketplace, there's the swaps. Any tool that you need for a properly functioning chain is there. When you look at who's building on a chain, it's game studios, and so we have over 50 studios now that are building on Beam, which are our own network. But then something that I haven't even touched upon is that the tech stack, in essence, part of those products that we have in the product suite is chain agnostic. And so last year too, we announced that we are working with Immutable CK EVM to offer our NFT marketplace on their network as well, which means that we also earn, marketplace fees on Immutable CK EVM from games that are not building on Beam, but they're working with Beam through our, product suite that is living on other chains. And I think in the future, I always say the subnet was and is a perfect breeding ground for us to build tooling and test tooling and figure out, okay, what is it really that the studios want when it comes to tools in their game? But we also want to be realistic in saying we know that not every studio is going to want to build on Beam because they might have different reasons to want to work on a different blockchain. Be it maybe that they get a nice cash grant there, be it that they maybe get other benefits there, be it community exposure, etc. It doesn't mean that we cannot work with those studios. We'd be cutting ourselves in our finger if that's the case. But we are very selective in which blockchain we then want to support. So that is Immutable ZK FEM. Sofon is going to be supported, which is an entertainment chain. With that, we can work with those studios on those networks too.
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, you have like the whole control of the network and ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
In a way, yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
And then curious about the Beam venture. Has that been running already, or?
Not yet. It's work in progress.
Okay.
So like I mentioned, Abu Dhabi, very summarized, Abu Dhabi wants to grow the gaming scene, in their area. And with that, they want to attract talent. They want to attract businesses. They want to attract business, basically. We saw an opportunity there where there's a lot of talent moving there. And those are studios and people that we, again, today are knocking on our doors to work with us because they don't know about us. But us being the first approved party venture to be there on the gaming AI side, on the Web3 gaming AI side, gives us a really big opportunity to have those people knock on our door and want to work with us. And so we're targeting to raise $150 million fund. We're right now going through the whole windmill of setting up all of that. There's a lot of regulatory stuff that comes with that. There's a lot of paperwork that comes with that, which is progressing good. And as soon as all of that's done, and as soon as the funds are raised, that's when the fund starts. The accelerator program starts as well, where we want to take studios by the hand, work with them to figure out their needs on the Web3 side, technology side. Hopefully, have them build on Beam and grow from there. So yeah, there's not too much for me to talk about there with which projects are we working with, etc. It's all work in progress, and it was only announced last quarter, so it's very fresh, I would say.
I see. Yeah, cool. No, that sounds pretty exciting. I know that many successful, I guess, like blockchains and teams that from past cycle or maybe couple of cycle now also doing a lot of ventures on the side as well, right? Which is, I guess, is like a way to help grow the ecosystem, which I think makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. And then I think the nodes where you said, well, that's part of layer one, so that's probably not going to be ready for
yeah. And then we have the AI side that we're taking food in right now as well. Like I mentioned, AI is just such a fast moving industry, and for gaming too is going to play such an immense role where you could have NPCs, basically non-player characters, so robots that are in the game that you now have to talk with in the game to maybe go on a specific quest, or maybe to have a specific dialogue to enter a shop or whatever. I think if you've played certain MMOs, like myself, I've played RuneScape from my early childhood, I would have to do the same quest over and over again throughout the years as I created new accounts, and that gets boring. But if you can use AI to make those dialogues, much more personal, much more customized based on what your journey in that game has been so far, that really gets exciting. And that's one way of which AI could be used. There's way, more ways when it comes to game design, maybe even developing game economies. There's a lot that we haven't seen it used for yet. We want to make sure that there too, we're on the forefront. We get to talk with the parties that are building in that direction and want to dip their toes in Web3 and do that with us.
Makes sense. Cool. Yeah. And just curious now, and then whom do you actually consider to be like your competitors in the space?
It's a good question because we are tackling, so many different
Yeah,
aspects when it comes to Web3. I think if you look at which are big competitors, I mean, like I said, the nice thing about our product suite is that in essence we could be chain agnostic. We can be working with different chains, which is what a lot of other chains wouldn't do. I think if you look at competition, well, then it would be like a Ronin, like an Immutable, that is also attracting game studios to work with, that also offer, well, in Immutable case, we have our marketplace there, but with Ronin, they have their own marketplace for NFTs. So yeah, there are different competitors, I would say, but when it comes to this complete picture, and with the venture fund, I would say we're playing in a different field than a lot of other parties are, and we have a different direction that many of them have. So I think at this stage of Web3, we're rather looking at collaborating with those people because, like I said, Web3 gaming still has to prove itself. So I'd rather
yeah.
work with those parties to make that happen and attract the talent and make it, sure that they have everything they need to push this industry forward, rather than already thinking about competition right now when we're just a drip in the ocean of what is gaming industry in total.
I see. Yeah, for sure. But I think, but just kind of curious. I guess maybe instead of the word competition, you can also think of like who's building in like the same space.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, supporting
Yeah.
each other. That's cool. Makes sense. And then this is one question I'm always curious about a lot of Web3 companies is that what is your business model? Do you charge the companies using your SDK? What is it?
So
How do
for
you earn
us, it
revenues?
is that if studios build on Beam, we get more activity on Beam. If other chains, gamers use our products, they generate fees through those products, be it the AMM, so the decentralized exchange, be it Sphere, the NFT marketplace. With the venture fund, we also have the investment side, meaning that as the market grows, so do our valuations of those positions, and so does the profit that we create through that. And that all goes back to, like I said, one central token, which is Beam, through all those different aspects that we have. So we're obviously looking to expand business opportunities, revenue opportunities. I think especially in Web3, you see a lot of promises, but not a lot of revenue being made by a lot of projects. And that is something that I feel that we're in the right direction to make that happen. Already were with the treasury, more so with the venture fund coming up, and hopefully as activity grows, also through the products that we've built.
I see. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so it's like basically transaction fee as a percentage for people building on it. Yeah,
Yeah,
product
but
fee.
towards the
Makes sense.
users rather than towards the studios in
Yeah,
this case. Yeah.
yeah. And I think please correct me if I'm wrong, but is there a Beam DAO already, right? I mean, you're
Yeah, well,
talking.
so with Merit
Oh,
Circle, we had the whole DAO side of things. So it was really cool early on when we still have a very vocal community. And so with the whole buyback and burn side of things, I think to date we've burned over 40% of the total token supply. I think it was maybe even more by now. But it was largely because of proposals that were made to burn certain unused tokens, to have those buyback and burns, to create certain frameworks and mandates that talk about this is what you can invest into this amount before you have to create a governance proposal. This is how you basically should de-risk your treasury, things like that. So that all was part of indeed that DAO and that whole conversation. To summarize, rather than having proposals for every single aspect in the way that you operate, it rather was that the community created frameworks and mandates that we could operate within, which I think is a very nice way to operate rather than, like I said, having very small, probably active minority vote on every single small piece that might actually affect your business negatively because it will change the direction too frequently based on maybe narratives or based on things that are not seeing the bigger picture that you might have mapped out internally, if you will.
Okay. So the DAO is actually called Merit Circle DAO, right? Yeah, that's like the
So
whole name.
like I said, we've had the whole transition towards Beam, away from Merit Circle. So everything is around Beam, Beam Foundation, Beam Labs, etc. around now. Different name, same practice, pretty much.
Got it. Yeah, cool. Yeah, but I do know that like many other organizations, they want to have the DAO as like a decentralized aspect, right? Because you have the foundation, which is like the steward. I'm not sure how would you explain, I don't know, foundation, the relationship between the three, right? For someone who's not new to Web3, right? Because that one is quite tricky.
Yeah, that is. I think for many people, it's hard to understand. I think it's a matter of, okay, so where does this treasury live? Which are the people that are actually on a day to day basis contributing to the products, to the development, to the growth of the ecosystem? How are other types of community members going to be able to weigh in when it comes to voting for things, or wanting to propose different directions to take, or maybe wanting to offer certain services or products that could work within that ecosystem? So I think, yeah, without getting too much into detail on how that works regulatory and entity wise, that is in a nutshell how operation wise that you would look at that.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I know it's somewhat there's some connection between the three, but yeah, it can be quite complex for you who are not in deep into Web3 yet. But yeah, what do you consider to be like some of the main challenge facing your company, Beam Labs? Yeah.
I think one of the larger challenges remains in Web3 not fully taking off the way that people had already expected it to take off. I think that, being very realistic, I said Web3 gaming is still very experimental. And so with that, we also have our foot in the door in AI as kind of I wouldn't call it a pivot. I wouldn't call it a spreading your risk type approach, but rather making sure that you are not 100% reliant on just Web3 gaming to succeed when there is such a bigger overhauling opportunity ahead of you that you can work towards. So for us, I would say the challenge has been not to pivot too much, but also not to be too rusty and stubborn in just solely focus on something that still has to prove itself. Yeah, I think that's the bigger learning lesson. And then obviously also because you're fully working remote with an international team, hiring can be challenging. That's something that throughout the years we've learned to improve a lot through setting internal, milestones, through having good conversations with people to really get to know them also on team offsites to see, does this not just work business wise, but also culture wise. And it helps also with the productivity within a team because you understand how people think and talk, which is way different than if you just have, a 30-minute call that is fully business focused. You might not understand how people really talk or mean things because you don't know them, And that's where things like this have really helped. And what I would say just has been a really positive change for us throughout the past few years towards where we are today.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I think when you said Web3 gaming is still experimental, I thought that Web3 gaming has improved a lot in terms of the UX, right? I guess because back in 2020, 2021, I think the UX is pretty bad. Like a lot of the game was very basic. You just log in, click, and that was it, right? You just
basically
click some button.
1990s.
Yeah, exactly. It's like going back in time. You just click some button. It's like farming. Right? Back then, it was more like farming. It wasn't. I don't remember feeling like gaming at all. But now I think a lot of the games have really improved and feel
it's
more
improved a lot. Yeah, but it's not number wise. If you look at the daily active users, daily active gamers, it's nowhere close. Like it's a drip in the ocean of what gaming industry is today. I think transaction volume wise, liquidity wise, speculation wise, it's not where it should be or could be. And that is mainly because, we haven't had that hit title yet, I would say. So when I say it's still experimental, it's that it's not mainstream, as in it's not common when you now go to Steam that one of the top 10 game uses blockchain technology. I think at that point, when that happens, that's when when consistently you see, Web3 titles also come into the top 100. And maybe we shouldn't even call Web3 titles then, but rather games using blockchain technology to enhance the player experience. That's when we can speak of success. And I do believe that there's a few titles coming out that have what it takes to achieve that. But today, technology friction has already been addressed quite a lot. It's way better than it was. Game quality is increasing, but developing a good game and having a good hit, that also takes time. And very often is also partially luck.
Yeah, it's true. It's I feel like there's probably some luck play in there as well. But then I guess the game have to be really exciting, right, and fun. There's so much fun so that people just like tell each other. And then I think back in 2020, which is like a lot of these Ponzi-nomics, like where people would just invite because they know they could earn money. But now we have to
Exactly.
prove the worth, right? The value. Yeah. So you cannot really entice people by like, hey, you can earn money, but hey, play the game because it's actually fun and
Yeah.
like how you used to do it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and being a Web3, fully remote company, right? I guess, you said like hiring challenging. How big is your company? Just give me a.
We have around
So,
50
yeah.
people,
Oh,
around
nice.
50. Yeah. Yeah. And I would say the larger amount of that is developers because, like I said, we are infra heavy.
Yeah.
And we're looking to push. We're also very agile in realizing that based on, there's moments where you have to go really fast. You need a bigger team than if it's more about scaling, improving, and taking those learning lessons, and maybe even when pivoting. So there are from time to time changes within the team, obviously, as you need different talents, as you may realize that remote working isn't for everyone. So there's a challenge there too. But I'd say throughout the years, we've had a really nice core group of people. It's really right now efficiently working together. They know, what you can expect from people with clear milestones set. And so it's a very nice way to work, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's like, I think Web3 is kind of really revolutionizing, I guess, in a lot of ways in which people work. But I think our industry is one of the few that's, like fully remote. But I feel like there's also a lot of merits when it comes to maybe once in a while gathering or once in a while hanging out at an office, right? So I'm curious, like how do you guys like build the culture, right? There's always some sort of a culture in a company, right? How do you try to build a culture inside the company?
I think the culture within Beam is a very nice culture. It's very open, it's very friendly, it's very much driven, success driven. So I like that on a Saturday night you open Slack and you can see, hey, there's actually been a bunch of developers that actually are online right now. They might be in a call together just wanting to work on stuff and build stuff and push things forward. And that's very exciting. I think culture wise, the way that we've built it is through seeing each other, all of us, full time, twice a year. Once this is in the Netherlands, because we also have a yearly community event where community members are gathering with us, where we might do a company presentation on, hey, where are we going, what have we achieved, but also just to have that community building, to go back to how do you build a community. It's seeing each other face to face and just looking in the eye and having fun conversations, not just about Beam. And the same counts for building a culture within your team. Like I said, it's remote. You have your scheduled meetings. You have those meetings. Maybe there's a little bit of small talk, but it's typically business, straight to the point. But during those team offsites twice a year for 1 week, you get to have those proper sit downs over a beer, over dinner, over lunch, maybe at a swimming pool. We work together, day in, day out back then on, so we have different areas typically on the site where teams or departments can sit together and brainstorm about things on what do you think is going well? What do you think should go different? Maybe there are certain pieces that are way easier to work on when you're physically together than if it is indeed online. So we noticed that did really well, both for culture, but also for productivity and being aligned with that star on the horizon that you're all working towards.
Cool. Yeah. So like how to rally everyone to build together, right? To a common objective. Yeah. And then but I feel like for remote work, probably need someone very independent, right? Need very little direction and can jump in. So I think that's
I would
why
say someone that is very, in a way, entrepreneurial. You need people that see the bigger picture. They know what they're working towards, and they are motivated to work towards it themselves. You need to be intrinsically or internally motivated to be able to push yourself day in, day out to effectively work when you're working remote. Because it's very easy to say, I'm going to do my groceries, or I'm going to play with my kids, I'm going to do the laundry because I'm at home anyways. No, you still have your things that need to be done and worked on, and you cannot just slack, and sit there and do nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, no, for sure. That's that's why I think that discipline is so important. For remote work, for it to work out. Cool. Yeah. Just a few more questions about, I guess, like Web3 in general and entrepreneurship. Because what is your tech overall about, like, I mean, we're seeing this proliferation of many blockchains. So I think we're going to see a lot more blockchain. I think, well, the number of tokens also, but also number of blockchain. So what's your
Yes.
take on that? Like, maybe, yeah.
I would love to see more actual DApps, so applications. I think there are plenty of blockchains now. And like I said, at the end of the day, what do people care about? They want it to be secure, cheap, fast, and work. But building and operating a blockchain is expensive. It's not cheap to do so. So why would we need thousands of blockchains when there's only hundreds of applications? And of those, maybe only 10 or 20, they're actually generating good enough revenue to justify operating their business long term and not going, out of business. And so I think that if you look into the near future, there's a lot of talk about AI. There's a lot of talk about RWA, so real world assets, taking real world assets on the blockchain to optimize, increase transparency, etc. I think we'll see DeFi, RWA, AI really grow when it comes to applications. I know for a fact, like you said, there's going to be way more blockchains again. It's kind of a pitfall. I feel like I'd rather see that attention devoted towards creating more actual businesses, revenue generating of businesses that, not just take money out of the market by raising funding, but also contributing back to it by generating revenue and putting that back into the ecosystem for growth.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think ideally you'd like to probably see at least as many dApps as number of blockchain, but I think they're hoping that will be the case.
And less memes, please.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's just if people are getting tired of memes yet, but I'm already
Everyone is, I feel like, but at the same time, a lot of people are not, right? Because they feel like that is their $1 in 1,000 lottery chance, if you will, rather than focusing on those businesses.
All right, cool. So how do you think Web3 gaming will continue to evolve in the future?
That's a very open question, which I think partially we touched upon it while we were kind of talking about Web3 being experimental. I think fast forward, we have right now, we have a whole bunch of studios that have what it takes to, in my opinion, ship a successful title. And those are mainly going to be Web2 studios that have shipped successful titles before. They know how to do proper user acquisition. They go back to the roots of gaming to make sure that the game is actually fun, which sounds very cheesy, but we also talked about a lot of games not having been fun. But they're looking at a way to enhance that gaming experience that they already have experienced and successfully shipped before, enhance that with blockchain features. And that could be as simple as just enabling players to not just buy in-game assets, but also sell them to other players again. To when you're done with the game, you can say, hey, I'm going to sell my skins. I'm going to take that money and I'm going to play another game and buy myself back in there again, right? But in the meantime, developers will still have earned money on it through secondary marketplace fees and whatnot. It could be as simple as saying, hey, this is a game that is really focused on the esports side of things, where if you have a game that has the user base to do that, you can say, we're not just going to do a yearly world, tournament with just top esport players. No, we are going to run weekly or monthly leaderboards or tournaments where people have to buy themselves in with a ticket and get, to have hopefully a piece of the pie that they can win. There's so many different ways in which, small features using Web3 can enhance a player experience, that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I feel like that's where Web3 gaming is headed towards. And to also go back to the AI side, I think AI is going to play a massive role when it comes to making those games more fun, be it on the conversational side, be it on learning to improve yourself in games where it becomes partially educational. There's so many different ways in which that can be used as well, that I feel like people are going to spend more and more time on entertainment as AI takes over other things. That gaming in the future, and with that Web3 gaming, in my opinion, is only going to grow much more and more than it is today.
Nice. Yeah, for sure. I think probably AI will have somewhat of a bigger impact as well too.
Yep.
Yeah, and actually, I really have to ask this question since we're talking about gaming. But what are your favorite Web3 games?
Favorite Web3 games? Oh, that's a nice. I
Yeah.
thought you were just going to say favorite games. Okay. What I noticed with Web3 games is that, obviously I've had to test hundreds of them throughout the past years as we're working with different studios, as we're learning about them. I think there's a few games that I kept going back to. The first one is Trial Extreme. And I'm by the way biased when it comes to Trial Extreme and Rumble Arcade.
What type of game is it, by the way?
Trial Extreme it takes you back to, well, it's nostalgia for me at least. It's a mobile bike racing game. And it's a game that has been on mobile since 2009, I believe. So they were a very early mobile game that I actually used to play in high school myself. And now they're coming with a Web3 title where you have new tracks, you have different ways that Web3 is embedded, be it from owning tracks to advertise, to upgrading, customizing your bikes, to tournament style features that we just kind of briefly covered. The reason why I keep going back to that game is because it's just a great game. It's a game that I know how to play it. It's just in a new jacket. It's really fun and it's casual. I think with me spending so much time behind the PC all day long, I tend to spend less time playing PC games and more mobile games, just on the couch, just being in a different room than my office. When I want to play games. Another game that I like a lot is Rumble Arcade, and they're also building on Beam. I'm just being very transparent there. What I like about them is a squad builder game where you have characters that you can upgrade throughout the levels.
What type of game is this? Is this like RPG?
It's a casual squad building game. So it's basically cartoonish characters where you have a board with different places, like an auto battler, where you can put those characters, and they will fight against another player, like an auto battler. But the nice thing here is that there's a lot of studios in Web3 gaming right now where a game has a small user base. It is an online game. And so you'll basically find yourself in a ghost town. Well, instead with Rumble Arcade, you are playing against ghost players. So it is real players. It is their board that they had at that moment in time of the game, but it's an auto battler. So you don't rely on them being online at that moment because they would have built their squad at another time. And so it's a very fun way to play a Web3 game without noticing that it's just a small player base still and no one is online right now, which is very nice to scale and ship. Another game that I really like is one game that we have co-launched our studio together, which is Forgotten Playland. And Forgotten Playland, again, is a casual game. The difference here is that it is a Mario Party style minigame title, meaning that if you like to play with controller, if you like to play on PC, hopefully ultimately on console, you can ask your friends, you can play online, you can have online tournaments, you just play those casual mini games. By the way, this plushie is from them, so that's pretty fun. It's just a very lively, fun environment, and that game is launching on Epic soon. So yeah, then people can just download it for free. But I like happy games, casual games that I just can play for like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and just put them away again and play them again tomorrow, essentially.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. I mean, it kind of makes sense in you building games and you can have to test a lot of games, right? Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Cool. Yeah, just two more questions. We close out the show. Mm-hmm. One is that, do you have any advice for people who want to build their own Web3 company?
Oh, that's a good question. Where to start? I think if you're not already, just be very involved when it comes to Web3 in general. Learn what you really find exciting, because at the end of the day, building a business is for a long run, and it's not just to raise money, go bankrupt and go out of business. It is something that you should breathe and live. And it's not a 9 to 5. It takes a lot of time of the day to build a community, to figure out a token ecosystem, and to build an actual business that generates revenue. So figure out what it is that you really like, see how this could fit within Web3 and whether it makes sense to launch something like this in Web3, and then go from there. If you don't want to immediately start your own business, a really good way to learn what it's like to operate within Web3 is by joining another company, even if it's just for 1 or 2 years. Web3 companies, a lot of them are very small, meaning that everyone in the team is a jack of all trades, meaning you learn the ins and outs of a business on very different aspects. than if you were to take a regular job in a traditional world where you're more, catered towards your specific title and activities. Use that experience to build a network and start your product when you're ready, when the market is ready, because you need to have product market fit.
Yeah, for sure. I think the product market fit is something that probably get ignored a lot in Web3.
There's a lot of build that's not native.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, exactly. I don't gonna say
Yeah.
that too, but yeah, exactly. I feel like the product market fit have to do with the token, but like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to name it, that's the name, but yeah. Anyway, that's another story for that. Cool. And final question: where can people follow you or your company? Feel free to share any public handles or username.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say we're mainly active on both X and Telegram. On Telegram, I believe it's at Build on Beam. Let me just double check because
sure.
I want to make sure you don't join a random scam channel. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's t.me/build on Beam. And then if you are on X, it is also, Build on Beam, and we have Beam Foundation accounts that we are active with. And then personally, mine is Marco_Beam. Happy to chat.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, make sure to put all those links in the show notes, and then so people can find you and follow you and your community. Once again, Marco, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show talking about Web3, AI, and Web3 gaming. Hopefully, we'll see some more hit titles in Web3, right? That's actually appearing
Let's hope
in
so.
the Steam store, right? I think you said, yeah. Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, appreciate the invite.
Thank you. And we're back to my studio. What do you guys think about this episode with Marco van den Heuvel, co-founder of Beam Labs? As a gaming enthusiast, I do hope that we will get to see high-quality AAA Web3 games that are actually fun to play in the future. If you have played any games on the Beam network, please leave a comment below to tell us your impression about the games. For the next episode, we'll be talking to Sebastian. He's the co-founder and CEO of Sophon. Sophon is building amazing on-chain experiences focused on entertainment and lifestyle application. Recently, they also launched Sophon Intelligent Agencies, a $5 million initiative to accelerate the development of AI agents on-chain. The Sophon Intelligent Agencies aims to create a self-sustaining ecosystem where AI agents generate value for users, a first of its kind approach to on-chain AI. If you enjoyed this episode, please give a like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. Thank you for watching and see you next time.